Good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the MMA Sucka Podcast. My name's Tim Wheaton, joined as always by the editor-in-chief at MMA Sucka, Frazer Krohn. Frazer, how you doing today, sir?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. We were just talking off air just briefly now. You know, no UFC fights to break down, not a massive UFC card this weekend to break down. We sort of accidentally broke it down last week, didn't we? Unknowingly. But we've got, you know, last week was a lot about Conor Benn, Chris Eubank Jr.
Yep.
Didn't happen. Didn't happen.
It sucks. It had so much hype going into it. Like, people that because there was no UFC, that everybody was kind of talking about this fight. It didn't happen. But you still got a piece out. You still got analysis out. You were like, I'm doing it. I'm publishing it.
You know, I got the preview out before the fight had been officially cancelled, and then the fight was cancelled.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just so gutted about it. But yeah, we'll go on to talk about that a bit later on, and then we obviously had yourself, you know, you're in person at Glory, and we posed a question on Twitter, and we posed a question to our guys as well. What do you guys, you know, like we said last week, it's a bit of a slow week, so you tell us what to talk about, and there's a couple of interesting talking points. So, you know, we'll do, you know, 15 odd minutes on Glory, 15 odd minutes on the boxing, 15-minute preview for the weekend, and then we'll end the show off with a little sort of mailbag, you know, what you guys want to hear. So yeah, looking forward to jumping straight into the Glory analysis, which, you know, came as part of the mailbag anyway. And then we had to, you know, like I said, you were there in person. We have to talk about it. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to the fan mailbag, because I saw the questions. We got some bangers, and fans are bloodthirsty according to these. Like, by the look of these questions, you guys just have a lust for violence, which you've come to the right show. But yeah, so was there in person. Not as media. I got VIP passes. I don't know why. I don't know. No one. I even talked to other media members, and like, what are you talking about? Why are you in that row? We're back there. And I was like, no, I'm up here. But I don't know why I was there. But so it was a good fight card overall, and it's really we'll start from the bottom fights and kind of work our way forward. Did you watch the fights at all?
I watched the main event, and I saw some highlights of Tiffany, which when we come on to that, I've got one big question about Tiffany, and I'm hoping you can answer it, but it's a strange one. So
yeah, well, okay, so we'll start from the bottom and then kind of work our way forwards. But Petch outpaced Abraham Vidali's. Petch is just one of those guys who's just so chill at like okay with just beating his opponent on points, because every opponent you're like, wow, you could knock your opponent out if you chose to, and you don't. You're happy to just cruise on points. He won 4 rounds, so the 5th round he kind of just took off. But he's so good that no one can do anything about it. No one can catch him. Tijani Beztadi, Moroccan-Dutch fighter. What I like about Tijani is he was well aware that a lot of these Moroccan fans in the audience watching, even half the fighters on the card were Moroccan. That's Badr Hari's influence. After Badr Hari's retirement, which happened very likely later on, he knew that half these people are going to stop watching. So it was a person kind of in the headlights of, I want to take all these fans for me. These people will be my fans now.
Like almost like a passing of the torch, but not in the same fight. Just a passing of the torch to the next big star from that. You know, like almost like a Michael Bisping to a Darren Till.
Yes,
which hasn't quite worked out. But you know, as Bisping was finishing off his career, Darren Till was really on the uptake.
Exactly the same thing, and he rose to the occasion. He made it feel like this lightweight title fight, and it was a big fight, but he really made it feel like a big fight, and it was a banger. It was a great fight. He defended the title. He then called out breast cancer in the post-fight interview, just like, oh man, you put Tijani, good job, man. You did everything you were supposed to do. Sergey Mastoboyev took the vacant light heavyweight title. Good job to Sergey Mastoboyev. It was a banger of a fight. He came in with injuries. He left with injuries. Great guy. Tiffany Van Soest defeated Sarah Musadak via unanimous decision and was booed out of the audience. What do you think of the fight?
Yeah, I don't. Like I said, I've only seen highlights of this one, but I'm not really quite sure why. What the crowd's issue was. You know, it's, you know, Tiffany. She's. From, you know, I'm not claiming to follow Glory nearly as closely as you, but I always thought that she was quite a big company star, as it were, you know, and people liked her, and she, you know, she does transition well. She's, you know, she's not one of these people to sort of trash talk, and you know, she's not negative on social media, should we say, outside of the ring. And then yeah, like you say, I only watched the highlights, so I wasn't aware that she got badly booed. But that comes as a surprise to me.
The booing was so vocal when she was trying to do her post-fight interview, and it was unnecessary. Because I think what people were booing was that they didn't think she deserved to win the decision. But keep in mind two things: Sarah Musadak was waving the Moroccan flag. Half the like, not even half, like more than half, 90% of the audience was Moroccan in this fight. And as we know, these are vocal supporters. And then it was also kind of a boring fight. I think the booing was very unnecessarily rude, but I don't think Tiffany gets it because she's a competitor. So she was like a collegiate soccer player into a karate fighter into a kickboxer. Like she's very much a competitor, not an entertainer first. So I think she was okay with just like winning, with kind of doing her style. She got a TKO in her last fight. She wasn't able to finish this opponent. It was a bit of a boring fight. I think she deserved to win, but the fans absolutely hated her. You know, what were you going to say there? Sorry.
Yeah, I just feel that she needs that other person to she almost needs to be the good guy in a rivalry now for the fans to really get behind her. And you know, I think the thing is with kickboxing and especially, you know, we saw in the main event there was a massive story around that. I think kickboxing occasionally struggles to do the storylines behind, you know, looking ahead to UFC 280, we've got Makhachev. You know, he's Khabib's protege.
The favela. Like, I love telling this story.
Exactly.
It's so good. Yeah,
and it's a storytelling exercise. Whereas with Glory, I feel that, you know, aside from the main event, because that's a different story.
Yes.
They don't exactly tell the story so well, or there's not even a story to tell. And it's just this competitor versus this competitor. This is the next contender versus the champion. So I almost feel that you need someone to come out, call Tiffany out, and say, look, you know, and really put Tiffany in the limelight, really, you know, build a big story around her so that she transitions over to maybe wanting to entertain the fans more rather than just, as you say, coming in, being a competitor, getting her job done and getting out of there pretty unscathed. In a lot of her fights, you know, you don't see her take an awful lot of damage, especially, you know, in the last one, like you say, she scored the TKO. And this one, yes, it was a contentious decision, but you know, I agree with you. I think she probably just did the cleaner work to be able to ultimately get her hand raised.
No, and you're completely right, and it kind of sucks when of kickboxing, even, and it's not just Glory. It's also in Fusion. It's also One Championship. It's also the K1 and Rise and Crush over in Japan. Of sometimes you are just fighting who's available because there's not. Like, for example, we started doing at beyondkick.com, we started doing rankings, and a lot of the women's divisions, we couldn't even fill out 10 fighters. And there's tons of women all over the world in this weight class, but we just couldn't fill 10 fighters. And for example, like she was fighting Sarah Musadak, who hasn't fought on the main card of Glory before. Even in the men's divisions, Petch was fighting a guy who had a loss in his last fight and then hadn't really fought for 2 years. Or like Stoyan Korplevensky, I think he just hasn't. No, he's been pretty active. But yeah, like for the vacant light heavyweight title, it's because one guy was Russian, so they stripped him, and the other guy went to the UFC. So there's no one left. So they had a vacant title. Tariq Khabib's had a bunch of losses in a different weight class. So then he gets a light heavyweight title. There's just not as many people as there once was. It really is just Moroccans and Dutch in Europe filling out these cards, and a lot of those people do recognize like the UFC is kind of where I make my money, because we just saw Alex Pereira have massive success, and he's one of the more exceptions to the rules. Most kickboxers don't do very well. Best of luck to Cedric Douambe, again, vacated a very promising career, a title in a champion in Glory, to potentially go to the UFC, and best of luck to him, and I hope he does well and all that. But yeah, it's a sport that, remember in the combat sports boom of Japan, K1 was the shit. And then they brought in like, hey, we're going to fight some pride fighters, and hopefully you guys watch MMA. Now it's the complete opposite. Yeah. We got MMA fighters. Can you guys please watch kickboxing?
But these are, you know, you do see some of the elite guys, you know, Israel Adesanya, Alex Pereira. These guys are coming across from, not just from kickboxing, from Glory kickboxing. Yeah. And you can just see the level of striking that these guys have in comparison to your everyday MMA striker, you know.
Oh yeah,
Israel, I think he made his debut against Rob Wilkinson, who's now in the PFL finals, knocking everybody out, finishing everybody. Yeah. And Adesanya finished him. I think it was the third late in the third round, or sorry, late in the second round or in the third round. And you get the casual fan who, as soon as the fight hits the floor, they start booing.
Yeah, I know.
Well, surely
you'd
be more interested in watching kickboxing and Muay Thai then, because the fight, unless a fighter gets knocked down, it's a stand-up fight. These two guys are on their feet. These two girls are on their feet for 15 minutes, 10 minutes, or as long as it lasts.
Yeah.
But it just, like you say, it doesn't seem people want maybe the blood and violence of a ground and pound elbow as a side to the slick. I mean, we'll move on to the main event now, but the rally from Overeem and those uppercuts in the final round, and the way that, if you just compare, we were talking about it last week, that he became very much a on his toes kind of MMA fighter towards the end of his UFC career.
I know, yeah.
And then he was quite flat-footed against Badr Hari, willing to just stand in there, and completely changed up his style. It was interesting to see.
But I want to touch on one thing that you were saying there with kickboxing, with fans booing groundwork. One thing, Jack Slack said it on Twitter, that one championship realized that fans are too dumb to realize that they actually do want kickboxing. So we're going to promote MMA and we're going to give you kickboxing when you tune in. And they're light. They call it featherweight. But yeah, they're light. It would be in the UFC, it'd be 155. Their lightweight division, their featherweight division is the best in the world. It is so good. Everyone in the top 10, that's actually the best division in maybe the history of kickboxing right now. But they can't promote it. No one wants to tune in for it. So they're like, yeah, come and watch MMA, please. And then check out the best kickboxing you've ever seen in history. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I just don't realize, that's probably what a lot of people actually want to watch.
I think one's doing it the right way, even with this crossover fight between Rodtang and DJ, was at the beginning of this year, mid this year. Yeah. And now you've probably, you've got people tuning in to see that without a doubt. You show Rodtang highlights, you show DJ highlights, and then you say these two are fighting in a mixed rules fight. People are tuning in. Despite the fact that Rodtang lost that one, you can't tell me that a lot more fans didn't tune in who hadn't ever heard of Rodtang before he fought DJ. Oh, I saw this guy, he fought DJ. I've seen his highlight package. I'm going to tune into his next fight. I'm going to tune into his next fight. I'm going to tune into it. He's without a doubt gained fans off the back of that, and therefore Muay Thai has gained fans off the back of that, because you're tuning into the Muay Thai, and like I say, the way that one do it, where they do an MMA fight, a Muay Thai fight, a kickboxing fight, an MMA, and they're really mixing it up between the martial arts essentially.
Yeah.
But, if you buy a one on Prime Video 2 or whatever, whatever number it is now, you might start the main card with a Muay Thai fight, and then you'll see two MMA fights, then you'll see a kickboxing world title, a Muay Thai world title. You'll probably, more often than not, they end it with the MMA fight, that the sort of card is promoted around the Angela Lee or the DJ. But that's the way to do it. That's the way to get fans, almost like you say. It used to be kickboxing, here's some MMA, and now it's MMA, here's some kickboxing. Yeah. And you almost want to find that happy medium where they both sort of manage to sort of meet almost. But I don't think, if one championship did a kickboxing only card, I don't think it would do it nearly as well as, or a kickboxing and Muay Thai card even. It would do nearly as well as sticking a DJ or an Angela Lee or Christian Lee or any of the bigger names on the card.
Man, they did one last year, their one championship First Strike, and that was the one that had it was an awesome card, but I don't think it got the hype that another card would, just because I think promoting kickboxing turns off a lot of fans for whatever reason, and it's the same as I don't know, you and I are dorks. If someone's like, hey, here's submission grappling, we're tuning in. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter what it is. Here's karate combat. We're like, yeah, cool, let's watch. Yeah, whatever. People hitting each other. That's what we're about for some reason. So we're disgusting.
Does that say more about us than it does about the sports, though? I think so.
But yeah, so it's a weird thing. But yeah, on Tiffany and not having storylines, but she had a good rivalry with Anissa Mexon, who's now in one championship. She called out Denise Kielholtz, who's in Bellator. There's not really anyone in Glory, but she called out two women who are barely in the right age category. I mean, Anissa Mexon was a really good one, but they already finished their trilogy against each other. Aileen Pereira was up there as well, Alex Pereira's sister. And they're kind of done their trilogy as well. Denise Kielholtz is looking at MMA. So you're calling out people who are you beat them, or they're not interested. They've converted to a different sport. So yeah, it's very tough to get the storylines right and really promote those storylines in a correct way. But I don't know. The thing is with this sport as well is that they're very much not able to promote in the US, and they're just for whatever reason, like, it's never turned over. Glory was on Spike TV, and that's even when they had Joe Schilling, like American kickboxers on American TV, and it just couldn't convert. It had all the same benefits that the UFC had early on, main primetime Spike TV, and it could never spread in the US. Now in the Netherlands, even like their home base, it's not doing amazingly. Morocco, I'm sure it's doing great. I don't think Glory cares. Hey, we're on air.
Apologies.
Go ahead if you need to. If it's a job,
no.
You gotta go. You go.
It's all good. It's all good.
Japan, I can't tell what's going on because they just had the biggest fight in history with Takuru fighting earlier this year. So I don't know like where it's at. Is it just having a renaissance era? Is it about to die? I genuinely don't know if we're about to enter a second golden era of kickboxing, or it's just going to die again. Like I have no idea what's going on, and I follow the sport, and I couldn't tell you what's going on.
It's a difficult one because you don't want it to die a death. Do you know what I mean? It's such a, you've got, you'll have to remind me
so much history.
Yeah, for sure. And you'll have to remind me of the guy's name. Fights at middleweight, American guys come over from Glory, quite highly ranked, just fought Iron Kutalaba to a draw. Justin Jacoby.
That's Jacoby. That's fun. Yeah,
and like you say, with Joe Schilling and Justin Jacoby, these guys are promotable American guys. I mean, Rico, I know he's Dutch, but he's in films.
Yeah.
He's knocking guys out. He's an absolute beast. He's a unit. And now I think Alistair Overeem is maybe going to help that. Alistair Overeem versus Badr Hari 3. Alistair Overeem versus potentially, it's looking like Rico Verhoeven next. Should, in theory, transition because people have heard of Overeem.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not convinced. I'm not overly convinced that it will. So it's difficult.
I don't think fans are as dumb as like, here's a name, because even Dutch fans, when I was talking about Overeem versus Badr Hari, who followed the sport for their lifetime, they're not fooled. They know, like you and I know, of like, so there's two grandpas fighting in the main event. You're like the biggest fight in your organization's last 5 years is two guys who have combined one fight left in their whole career. And then they fought, and it was fun because of the storyline. Without the context, if this fight existed in a vacuum, you would just be like, man, these guys are old. These guys look sick as hell, right?
And it's, I have no doubt that regardless of who would have won, whether it would have been Badr or Overeem, Rico plays with them both, in my opinion. It's a fun storyline, and you've got the old guard versus the sort of new, not even up and coming anymore, because Rico's been at the top for however many years. But you've got the old guard in Overeem, where you can show his Pride highlights, his K1 highlights, his UFC highlights. Now you can show the couple of two knockdowns, wasn't it, against Badr, and how he came back. But Rico's just a different level, and it sells, but it's not a competitive sell. It's a nostalgia storyline sell, in my opinion. Oh,
I completely agree with you. And like it almost took Overeem a minute to kind of get with it, because he hasn't fought in like a year and a half at this point. Badr Hari fought just a few months ago, but he's been knocked out in his last couple fights. He's not in good condition. He's not as durable as he once was. And Overeem, also not durable. He's notably not a durable fighter, and he never really was. He was a very chinny fighter through his whole career for various reasons. And he almost got slapped in the first round here, and we thought that was maybe it. But no, rallied back. He's just the better conditioned fighter out of the two guys. I think, honestly, it was more timing for this fight. At any point in Badr Hari's career, he probably beats Overeem in a kickboxing match. Like, it's insane to think that he wouldn't beat him. Of course, Badr Hari would beat him in a kickboxing match. Badr Hari's just out of shape, man. He is old as hell. He's not durable. You know what I mean? But he's
the juice factor as well. I feel we'll go on to talk about steroids in about Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. in a minute. But the boy was big. He's bigger than we've seen him for, and more ripped than we've seen him for a long time. And he's not Benjamin Button. He's not getting younger. He's only getting older. Like you say, we haven't seen him compete for a year or so.
He comes back bigger than he was.
Back big, shredded, quick, strong. It's like, that is maybe fighting at home in the Netherlands has done something to him, but
no. So let me tell you. So the Glory got in trouble in 2022. 2022, because they had their own private USADA. And the Dutch government looked at it and said, like, this is maybe But this wasn't said out loud, but they were like, you actually need to start drug testing your athletes, like at an Olympic level. The government said, we have our own drug testing program, and it's important that we do this. So we will test your athletes. And Glory was like, no, so we'll go to Belgium to do our fights now. And then they kind of they capitulated and said, yeah, no problem. You can drug test our athletes. Alistair Overeem then went and trained in Thailand. So,
I see. Yeah. Suspect.
Remember the thing with George St. Pierre of if you just go to Antarctica or Cuba, USADA can't get you.
They're not going to travel out to get you. And it's, yeah. But like I say, there's ways to get around it, to say the least. But the guy he had muscles on muscles. And, for someone like you say, who's been chinny all his career, but especially so in the last few fights. I know he won fights later on in his career. Yeah. That's not to say that he wasn't rocked in those fights. And
oh man,
he was just walking Badr down in that final round, especially. But again, it's open scoring. It really did us a favor in that one because we got a phenomenal last round. I thought he might even finish Badr in that last round. The second knockdown, when Badr looks over to his team and sort of says look, how long have we got? And then Overeem was walking him down, and he clinch against the ropes, and the referee's struggling to break them up. It's enjoyable. That's the word for me, enjoyable. And I'm like I say, I'm happy because I don't claim to be a hardcore Glory fan, but that was just a fun fight in a kickboxing fight, which and it's a kickboxing fight that transitioned over. I feel people tuned in to see Alistair Overeem, and it was the only thing going on this weekend. It was the only combat sports of at a high level that we can break down, because nothing else happened. There's no UFC, no Bellator. There was some Cage Warriors I didn't actually follow myself. I didn't even realize it was on. We had a boxing match. It didn't go ahead because of the failed test. And then,
before we move forward onto that one, I do want to throw an idea at you, because like you said, a great storyline. And the fight was actually quite fun as well. It was a ton of fun. You got the drama you wanted. One guy rallying back. I've always talked about Badr Hari as maybe the greatest runner-up in history, because he never got the gold that he was really close to getting, because he was stripped of titles. He was disqualified in matches that he was winning. It kind of slapped me in the face, but Alistair Overeem, with just one or two different punches in his entire career, would have been he was winning. He was beating Shogun in 2005 before losing. He was beating Chuck in 2003 before losing. He was beating Stipe before losing. 3 different punches in his career, and we might be talking about the greatest combat sports talent in human history.
I mean, just looking at his resume, there's some of the names that he's fought. I think he'd really want to get that Fedor fight. I know he wants one more.
He said no to Fedor. I asked him about Fedor. He's like, no, Fedor's so old. Which is out. That's pretty saying a lot.
If that's Alistair Overeem saying that. But, I still think that Fedor fight, to get him on your resume, yes, he's old, but if Bellator offer you hella money to do it, I think he does it. And, but like you say, he's definitely top 5 best fighters to never win a UFC title.
Oh, easily.
Without a doubt, and he's top 3 of maybe coming closest to winning a title without actually winning it against Stipe. He knocked Stipe down, and I believe he knocked Stipe down. I can't quite remember that fight, but and he was dominating Stipe. Well, not dominating, but he was beating Stipe, like you say, convincingly before Stipe caught him and finished him with ground and pound. He arguably tapped Stipe if you to believe Alistair, but like you say, one slip here rather than a roll, one roll there rather than a slip, and he's a world champion in multiple organizations, with possibly and going down, like you say, as one of the greatest combat sports athletes ever, not just in kickboxing and MMA ever.
Yeah,
because he would have been a 3, 4, 5, 6-time world champion even. There's fights in the UFC that if he would have beaten Stipe, I would have liked him to see, against Daniel Cormier. How does Daniel Cormier deal with his length and his kickboxing? And yes, he'll probably get taken down, but it is what it is. Against John Jones, why that's a fight that I would have loved to see, but it's not to be. And I think he almost came through 3 or 4 years too quickly for the huge fights in MMA today. If he was 3 or 4 years younger, he'd probably still be competing in MMA
easily. But
let's be honest, we'll get the Rico fight next, which you know, we're talking what, February, March next year, maybe. I don't know if Glory
early next year,
what the schedule is like for Glory, but yeah, we'll and that'll, you know, that like you say, that'll be Europe. That's the European card, you know, and to bring a huge fight like that to Europe on a European time zone, it's fun, it's exciting, and you know, another one that will cross over into the mainstream and guys will tune in for.
Yeah, that's a big one. But yeah, Overeem in his like you said, it's going to be a fun one against Rico. Good storyline. Really a lot of hype leading up to that one. But yeah, Overeem in his like where he is as a greatest of all time, he's on that list, but he's with guys like Dan Henderson and Vitor Belfort. Where like you are a goat, but I don't know where to put you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe top 10. I have no idea, but you're on the list at the very least. Anyway, let's move forward to the boxing card that was canceled. We were hyping it up. We were talking about it. What happened?
Do we have to? We have to talk about it, but I am so gutted. You know, we broke it down last Monday. I was, you know, watching all the YouTube hype from Matchroom. But then on Monday, there were a few rumors after we came off air, a few rumors that something wasn't quite right, maybe a failed test. I assumed that it was Chris Eubank Jr. Nothing against him, but he was the one that was having to drop down two weight classes, two or three weight classes anyway. He was having to drop a lot of weight. You know, 10. He had to drop 11 pounds from what he usually fights at, and he cuts to make that 168, so he had to make 157. But as we know now, that it was Conor Benn that failed the drug test, and not only did it put a shade on the fight itself and not the two fighters, on Conor Benn, but it was really disappointing because so unlike with the UFC and how you alluding to with Glory, how they have everyone is compulsory, they have to sign up for USADA testing.
Right.
Same with boxing. Under the British Boxing Board of Control, you have to sign up for UKAD, so UK anti-doping. You know, it's the UK's version of USADA. But you can also sign up for the additional VADA, which is the Voluntary Anti-Doping Association. It costs a lot of money, and these two guys did that. The UKAD didn't pick up on the drug itself, which is worrying. It makes you question how many times this has happened. VADA's test picked up on the drug. So the UKAD, if they hadn't have signed up for VADA, the fight would have gone ahead on Saturday. But VADA signed up. The only thing is, VADA can only advise the Border Control.
Yeah.
They can't ban a fighter because they don't have any jurisdiction.
Yes.
The drug that he tested positive for, the sample, I should say, was taken on September the 1st. The results came back on the 23rd of September. What I don't understand is why we had to wait until the Wednesday of fight week for the Daily Mail article to come out. You know, I was, like I said to you, I was in a coffee shop with my girlfriend just typing up my preview. Literally, I was saying, just finishing it, notification comes up from Tim. Oh no, or whatever. And I was like, are you joking? Like, I cannot, honestly, I must have been on the last paragraph of my preview. And I get a little sound in my headphones, notification from you. And like I say, you know, I had no idea. There was rumors going around on fight week, but you know, by the Wednesday of fight week, you'd expect the rumors to have either materialized or just completely gone away, and they didn't. They even did a public workout, both men, Conor Benn and Chris Eubank Jr. I just don't understand, from the 23rd of September, which was a couple of Fridays ago now, to the, what was it, the 5th of, the 5th of October. Where was the conversation there? Because if he fails, get the B sample, get that tested. Didn't happen. I don't know why, you know, there's obviously policies and whatnot, but I don't know why the D sample and the B sample are not sent off together. So you can test the sort of A sample, as it were. Okay, this one's failed for, the drug is clomiphene. So
what is that? Is that like an estrogen blocker or something?
So what it is, it's a female fertility drug.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a testosterone booster.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
So apparently, I heard on a podcast that it's used to kickstart testosterone post steroid use.
Yes, that makes sense.
And it's a masking agent for a more sinister. You know, you're not testing positive for anabolic steroids. You're testing positive for clomiphene, which is why it's banned, because it masks the steroid use.
Very similar to like the Brock Lesnar situation of like
John Jones failed for the exact same thing.
Yes,
and you know, he got but he managed to produce this over the counter, you know, whatever protein powder, vitamin tablet, and say, look, this is what I took.
Yeah,
you had tested it, traces of clomiphene. You should have been more careful. You should have let us know. You get a year ban. The worrying thing is that, yeah, from the 23rd of September to the 5th of October, people were pretty much none the wiser. People are making their way down to London for fight week. It's a huge fight.
Yeah, it is.
People, you know, people are you know, more than likely are flying over from abroad for this fight week. What I'm worried about is that the British Boxing Board of Control, Eddie Hearn, Kiefer Sutherland, who's the co-promoter, Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, were having meetings between the two of the five of them.
Yeah.
And looking to possibly still go ahead with the fight.
Yeah.
Despite the banned substance in the... There's a lot of money in this fight. If you ask Chris Eubank Jr., Conor Benn's tested positive. Chris Eubank, bigger guy, more experienced, coming down in weight. He's got all the advantages. Conor Benn takes a drug. Chris Eubank Jr. is still going to take the fight because A, it's a payday. At the end of the day, these guys, they've gone through the camp. Chris Eubank Jr. shred all this weight. Conor Benn, of course, he's going to want to fight. You know, he's the one that failed, but he's still going to want to fight. And
of course he is.
You know, at the end, I think Eddie Hearn and Kiefer Sutherland were doing everything they could to keep the fight on. There was even rumors, Michael Benson on Twitter, really good boxing journalist, said that they were looking at getting it sanctioned by the Luxembourg Border Control, who sanctioned, I want to say Tyson Fury versus Derek Chisora fight years ago. I'll double check that, but they were looking to get it sanctioned by a random alternative boxing border control so that the fight would go ahead.
Do you remember us saying of like, we are not far off from just a circus act?
For sure. So David, this was on the 5th of October. So Chris Eubank Jr. versus Conor Benn reported he may be sanctioned by the Luxembourg Boxing Federation, like David Haye versus Derek Chisora, after the British Boxing Board of Control prohibited. So the British Boxing Board of Control, in the end, prohibited the fight after the article had come out.
Right.
Certainly questionable, because why not prohibit it, you know, weeks before? But, you know, it is what it is. You know, it is what it is. But, you know, it is worrying that there was, up until the Wednesday of fight week, that fight happens. If the voluntary anti-doping association weren't involved, because it is voluntary, you don't have to sign up for it. Often, you know, two clean fighters will sign up for it if one doesn't sign up for it. So Joshua Buatsi, I believe, had a fight cancelled by Eddie Hearn because Joshua Buatsi signed up for it and his opponent refused to sign up for it. So that's a bit suspect. Yep. We're pulling out of the fight. What's even more concerning is what I heard on the Fight Disciples podcast. Adam Cattrall works for TalkSport, works for BT Sport, you know, reputable, really reputable guy. Speaking to Michaela Meyer, who obviously fights on the co-main event this weekend, asked her, have you been drug tested? Not once for this fight. Despite the fact that it was previously supposed to happen weeks ago before the Queen passed away. The card was cancelled. They got up to the day of weigh-ins and she'd never been tested. Now, I can understand maybe not testing her when she's in America, because financially to get over to America just to test a fighter to then come back. But don't put Americans on British cards then, or have someone based in America who can go and test these fighters. In this instant, go and test the two girls in the co-main event and Clarissa Shields. But she'd been in the UK. She's Michaela Meyer is in the UK a lot. From you know, I see her doing a lot of sort of promotion. She does a lot of matchroom stuff and a lot of DAZN stuff. So she's in the UK a lot. Why is she not being tested? Why is she not being tested? And she'll be in the UK now. Obviously, she fights on Saturday. Still hasn't been tested, and that was on Saturday night. That's a week before. Are you really risking a second card in a row? Yes, it's not an Eddie Hearn card. This one's a boxer card with Ben Shalom being the promoter. But that is concerning. And apparently the only post-fight testing is they'll do a piss test after the fight. Well,
that's nothing. That's not anything.
But that's after the fight.
Yeah, that's after the fight. Yeah,
you know, let's say Michaela Meyer goes in there, very highly unlikely, but knocks Alicia Baumgarten straight clean out in the first round, first punch. Baumgarten can't, you know, something, touch wood, sinister happens. Then she pisses hot. Well, that's a huge issue, but that's boxing gonna boxing, you know. That's what seems to happen. And luckily this weekend we've got the Shields Marshall card. You know, I've got a preview out for it.
But let's talk about, like, drug testing in combat sports. You have people even to this day saying maybe it's fine. Like, we want to put, no one wants an unfair advantage. So if they're all on some performance enhancing drugs, maybe that's an okay thing. I think it's very important to actually ban drug testing in combat sports. Like, I do miss the Pride era where nobody was being tested because you got behemoths and it was cool. That was great. But we are hitting people in the head. These things do matter a lot. But like Keith Kaiser always talks, or not Keith Kaiser. Who's the UFC USADA shill? What's the dork's name? Novinsky, as he talked about. He was like, we're catching up to cheaters. Even as testers, they're always going to be one step ahead. We're trying to figure out the stuff that they're doing. People are getting wealthier. Fights are getting bigger. We got better drugs. Like, he got caught for a masking agent and only on one test. You know, the other tests didn't even catch it. Like, is it even realistic? And I'm not saying we should throw our hands up and give up, but is it realistic to even keep testing these fighters? Like, they're going to keep cheating. It's going to be prevalent forever. It's never going to go away.
Well, you know, it is. I was having a debate with someone on Twitter a few weeks ago about this guy thought that you should just let fighters juice, and that just
I get it. I've heard that. Yeah,
it just loses, in my opinion, loses the reputation of the sport. Then it's just who can, and it's dangerous. You know, these aren't meant to be ingested by. A lot of these aren't. You know, a female fertility drug is not meant to be ingested by a male. It's a female fertility drug for a reason. It's not a male fertility drug, or, you know, and you know, it's concerning that I think it was Aaron Bronstead broke a few weeks ago that Conor McGregor hasn't been tested in the last
that's a lot of
5 months, 6 months or something. And it's like
a bunch of garbage.
Has anyone seen his Instagram? He is humongous. And yes, he's doing these films and stuff, but this is a guy that used to make featherweight and look like a skeleton with a little bit of skin sort of torn over the skeleton, and now he'd have to legitimately cut off a leg to even make 155. Like, he is humongous, and he's not being tested by USADA at all.
BS.
And like, you know, these are out of competition tests.
Yep.
And they're not being done. Why? I know they're random tests, but surely, you know, you should get a spreadsheet with all the UFC fighters. 10 randomized, you pick out 10 names, right? These then go into the next spreadsheet, right? Another 10 randomized on the original spreadsheet. So everybody gets tested. And yes, it's got to be randomized, but it can't be randomized. It can't be the UFC's biggest star, who happens to be out of action, coming off 2 losses, has just come off a broken leg, is looking wham.
He's looking big.
You know, there's lots of questions about sort of recreational drugs around him, and there always has been. Yeah. And yet it's just a coincidence that he's the only fighter that hasn't come up on a random test in the past 5 months. I don't buy that at all. But no, going back to your original point, I don't think that we can just say, okay, no testing. Let's just everyone juice as much as you want, because it's not safe. It brings the reputation of the sport into repute, and especially, you know, it's like you say, we're punching, kicking, elbowing, and kneeing people in the face and in the head. Like,
we're not hitting a ball farther. We're not hitting a puck further. You know what I mean? We're not passing a football farther downfield. We're hitting a guy. We're hitting a person.
And you know, I'd be extremely surprised if Gordon Ryan hadn't dabbled. You know, I don't want.
He's like a master. He's a master of doing something.
Exactly. But then you look at the sport that he's in, and what's the worst that can happen? Really, you can break a limb, you can choke someone out.
Okay, yeah.
Why not? Kind of thing. You know, there's no strikes to the head. Yes, you're wrestling, and things can go wrong, but the number of serious life-threatening injuries in competitive jiu-jitsu in comparison to MMA is you can't really compare the two, in my opinion. So why not kind of let him juice, as it were? Because, you know, everybody's kind of on something. If you look, you know, Gabi Garcia, the biggest. She's one of the biggest humans I've ever seen.
She's big, yeah. She's good size.
But all these people, Gabi Garcia, Gordon Ryan, Nicky Ryan, Nick Rodriguez, they're all world-class BJJ athletes. They're huge and ripped at the same time. That is insanely difficult to achieve for bodybuilders, let alone people who, you know, they weight train, but they technique train more often than not, especially in jiu-jitsu. So it's that, you know, there's questions around that. But again, they're not in a sport where the injuries can be life-threatening. Yes, you can choke someone out and they can lose consciousness, but more often than not, within 5 minutes, they got their wherewithal about them again. Yeah. You know, looking forward to the UFC this weekend. If Alexa Grasso's juiced out of her head, she knocks Viviane Araújo out, and Araújo doesn't regain consciousness again, and, you know, has a serious injury. Yeah. Unlikely because of the weight. You know, it's a bad example, but, you know, you got Misha Serkinov, and Alonzo Menafield is a great example. He is humongous. If he knocked Misha Serkinov out and then it comes out that he's been on PEDs, again, we're just using Alonzo Menafield as an example. I'm not for 1 second suggesting that Alonzo is taking anything sinister, but just using it as an example because he's, you know, just look down the card and he's one of the biggest guys on there. 205, you know, there's no heavyweight fights. There will be the heaviest fight on there. He's huge. He hits hard. If it's then found out that he enters the bout with a significant unfair advantage and Misha Serkinov isn't on drugs, you can't be having it. And it, like I say, it brings the reputation of the sport into repute. And you'd have to change the whole sport of MMA. You know, you'd have to have, you know, we call him TRT Vitor for a reason. We say that
he was big.
We have the pre and post USADA when we're talking about fighters. You know, you can't really talk about goats of the sport and still talk about, you know, let's, for example, pound for pound king at the moment, Alexander Volkanovski. Yeah. But who's to say that, you know, Max Holloway, if he started juicing, wouldn't beat Alexander Volkanovski? Yeah, I know. And you'd have to have all fighters on steroids or no fighters on steroids. You'd have to, you know, splinter it to have just steroid only fights, non-steroid only fights, because it's an unfair advantage for a reason. They're banned substances for a reason. Yeah. And I can completely see your point. You do miss the sort of freak show fights, as it were, of these two absolute monsters. Brock, insane. Brock Lesnar, Alistair Overeem, insane amount of muscle in the octagon that night. But it's not. It's just not normal, is it, for two guys to be huge, shredded, and to be, you know, I mean, Brock Lesnar was ill going into that fight. He had serious health conditions, and getting a swift kick to the stomach by one of the best kickboxers in the UFC probably didn't help.
But there were victims of this era. Like, we look back very much with rose-tinted glasses, so much so of the golden era of Japan, and well-deserved. It was amazing. It was brilliant. Even looking back now, if you were a new MMA fan, you can still watch Pride and K1 and just like, holy shit, this is insane how good this is. But there were victims of this era. Guys like Gilbert Yvel, Spencer the King Fisher, very clear brain damage of that era. Even Wanderlei Silva. And it sucks to say, but Wanderlei's got some damage. But even on the other side of like, doing it too much. Right now we're talking about designer drugs, but a lot of those guys couldn't afford it, couldn't afford good designer drugs. They were using what a lot of the Soviets were using, and way too much. Guys like Bob Sapp, Mark Kerr, Mark Kerr, and Kevin Randleman. Like, they were doing unchecked because no doctor was prescribing them. So they were just doing unchecked steroids, and it affected them in later age. We know what happened to Kevin Randleman was because of, you know, what he was on during, how good he was. And he was good. He was good in his prime. UFC heavyweight champion, nearly a Pride heavyweight champion. But yeah, like that's there's victims to what was going on there, right?
Yeah, for sure. And you know, these fighters have got to think not only about the health of their opponent, really, because you know, let's say Islam Makhachev and Oliveira. Islam Makhachev knocks out Oliveira, but then tests positive. Islam Makhachev's also got to think about himself. How much of effect that, like we said, these are not meant to be ingested by humans. A lot, 9 times out of 10.
Absolutely.
And if they are, they're medically prescribed for a specific reason: injury, illness, health condition. You know, these things exist because they're meant to be used in a medical sense. They're not meant to be just used because you want to train longer and harder and put on that extra little bit of muscle and have that little extra bit of testosterone. It's not. There's a reason that they're banned substances, because they're not safe for human consumption and or non-medical consumption. They're not meant to be. You know, roid rage is a real thing.
Yeah.
You go. I mean, you know, you go into a fight juiced out of your head. It's dangerous for both the fighter that you're facing and yourself.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult one, but it's, you know, luckily we don't get too many in the UFC in high level MMA these days where the guys are popping the week of fight week, because if they are, it's 2-3. You know, Bobby Green got popped and is suspended at the moment, but he openly admitted, you know, I didn't take steroids knowingly. It's a protein powder or something to that effect, and you know, it's my fault. That is fair enough. He hadn't got a fight booked and he's out of competition.
Yeah,
he's banned for 6 months, so I think he'll be probably available, you know, January, February time, which is time that he probably would have taken off anyway. But you know, you look at, there's no heavyweight fights on the card this weekend, but
thank God.
Yeah. But you know, Cub Swanson, Jonathan Martinez is the co-main event.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just seeing that's being contested at bantamweight apparently.
Cub, no, Cub, you're a Hall of Famer. You don't have to cut.
Yeah.
Cub, no. Cub's not. And this is, you can see it. I was like, man, the UFC is maybe building a name off of an old dog. Cub Swanson's gonna get beat up here.
Yeah, I didn't know that he was dropping down in weight, but yeah, to that point, you know, you wouldn't want this. You wouldn't want this card to lose. This card isn't great. The original main event was Cannonier, Sean Strickland. That fell off. You then had Neil Magny and Daniel Rodriguez. That fell off last week. You wouldn't want any more fights to fall off due to a failed steroid test now. And you know, because like we said last week, we'll go on to talk about the card now. It's not particularly strong.
No, the Askarov Royval fight is the only one I think is worth talking about. I mean, Grasso and Vivian we did talk about, but there's known unknowns in it. We don't entirely know how that's going to play out, and I think it's a fair assessment. But Askarov Royval, that's a banger of a match. Those are two great guys at the top of the division,
without a doubt. And I think Royval's got an uphill battle.
Yes, he does. Askarov is good.
Narrowly lost to Kai Kara France last time out. You know, although it was a unanimous decision, there was contentious rounds in there throughout. And, you know, again, like we said earlier, a slip here and a roll there, or maybe if he'd landed a takedown, or he'd landed maybe one big strike that knocked the head back of Kai Kara France, he could have got that title shot against Brandon Moreno whenever it was Kai Kara France got knocked out recently. But Brandon Royval, I mean, I've never quite understood Brandon Royval. He burst onto the scene, and then he picked up 2 straight losses, and they're both finished losses. A little bit disappointing, but then he's come back now, beat Bontarin and beat Match now.
Yeah,
he's very up and down. But I mean, with the greatest respect to Rodrigo Bontarin and Match now, huge step up in competition to Askar Askarov, and the fact that Askar Askarov is coming off a loss, I think he's going to go in there. You know, he's never got a finish in the UFC. I wouldn't be surprised to see most of this play out on the floor, and I think Askar Askarov probably gets it done via submission.
So when we were talking to Muhammad Makayev after his UFC London fight, Muhammad Makayev said, "I want to still be the youngest champion in UFC history." And we asked, I asked, when you fight for a title and win it as the youngest UFC champion, who is the champion? And he said, it's going to be Askar Askarov. Like that's how good he is. He is well respected by his fellow fighters next to him. Like his contemporaries know how dangerous he is. And like you said, against Kai Kara France, I mean, you run it back now. That's a close fight. Run it back now and you get a different result. Run it back 10 times and you get 10 different results from that fight. Askar Askarov is a great fighter.
And, you know, like you say, I think I'll have to think back, but I always do, you know, the turn of the year, who will be champion at the end of the year. I'm pretty sure I put Askar Askarov. No disrespect to Figgy, no disrespect to Moreno, or Kai Kara France, obviously, who is in the title picture still, or Royval, you know.
Style-wise, Askar Askarov is a great
nightmare. You know, he doesn't have seemingly any flaws. He's really good at stand-up, really good on the ground. We haven't seen him have to be taken into those deep waters yet, but that says more about his ability than it does about his weaknesses. The fact that no one's been able to take him into those deep waters. Yes, he lost against Kai Kara France, but as you alluded to, you watch that fight 10 times, it's a different result. You could literally split it 5-5 with the result. You could. And Brandon Royval, I think Royval is good. I don't think Royval is Askar Askarov good, unfortunately, for Royval. I've got a lot of respect for Royval to come back after 2 straight losses and pick up 2 straight wins almost instantly back. But if you just look at the rankings, you know, Askar Askarov ranked 5, Brandon Royval Askar Askarov ranked 4, Royval at 5.
Yeah,
there is some competitive matchups in that division, but I think Askar Askarov probably comes out on the top of, without a doubt, everyone below him. And I think he gives Kai Kara France and Moreno, you know, a good run for their money. And Pantoja, I wouldn't be surprised. I know we got the announcement. Is it in Brazil? The 4th fight between Moreno and Figgy early next year. I wouldn't be surprised if Askar Askarov doesn't take any licks in this one to face Pantoja in if it's not a co-main event, at least on the card.
Sign us up
as an alternative to the main event and a number 1 contender spot. And I think Askarov, unfortunately, Royval is going to be looking to come back with a vengeance this weekend.
Completely co-sign with you. Yeah, Askar. I think it was the best fight on the card, and I think Askar Askarov kind of gets to consider. I don't see anything else on the card that's super worth discussing. Should we get to? I did interrupt you, so we could talk. I mean, it was a good diatribe. That was a great little sidetrack that we did. But should we get to the actual fights, the big boxing fight this weekend? This is the one that we got comments on this one. I was so surprised that this was the one that really lit up the audience. People were like, "Fraser's an idiot. I can't believe it." Finally, we're here, so you can tell them they're wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think Savannah Marshall, you know, women don't historically get knockouts because they're 2-minute rounds and that's just not enough time to work. Savannah Marshall gets knockouts in 2-minute rounds, irrelevant of, you know, who her opponent is. She's knocked out pretty much everyone that she's faced. She's never faced Clarissa Shields. Clarissa Shields needs to be on her bike. You know, we'll link the podcast that we did about this fight down below because we've already broken it down. It's meant to happen. Just quickly, I'm picking Savannah Marshall because I'm biased and I want the Brit to win.
Because I'm biased.
I said it. And I also picking Michaela Meyer because she just comes across a lot better than Alicia Baumgardner. No disrespect to Baumgardner, you know, she got that big knockout over Terry Harper. Yeah. But I just think that it's a heavy hitter versus a really slick boxer in Michaela Meyer, and I think Michaela Meyer probably boxes her head off, and if she can avoid that big strike, she boxes her head off for 10 rounds. I still to this day will not understand why we're getting Shields versus Marshall, Michaela Meyer versus Alicia Baumgardner, 2-minute rounds, and there's only 10 rounds. If they're 2-minute rounds, make them 12 rounds. If it's 10 rounds, make them 3-minute rounds. I mean, it's just shouting into the wind at this point. But you know, it's an all-female card, which is quite exciting. We've got Caroline Dubois, Lauren Price, the Olympic medalist, Shannon Ryan and April Hunter, and Ebony Jones as well. They're all, you know, exciting female prospects in UK boxing and world boxing, obviously, with Shields, Michaela Meyer and Alicia Baumgardner. So it's an exciting card to look ahead. We've got the rematch of Devin Haney and George Kambosos.
That's a good one.
No interest in it. I've got no interest in it.
Never mind. I'm not bad.
No, it's just that the first fight was so one-sided that I just think that
was just wasn't that like That was just a few months ago, wasn't it? That wasn't even that long ago.
Yeah, I believe it was in, to double check, June. And Devin Haney just boxed his head off. Kambosos had the rematch clause. But, you know, it's exciting because we get one champion. It's not competitive. And it's also not competitive in the Deontay Wilder returns for the first time since his trilogy with trilogy conclusion with Tyson Fury. He Brooklyn, New York, Barclays Center. He knocks out Robert Helenius and gets his. He has to call out Anthony Joshua. He has to call out Anthony Joshua.
Oh man, I wish these guys would just fight each other already. Because my God, I'm getting tired.
He just needs to call him out. If once he, let's be honest, Robert Helenius is there to be hit. If he's a solid fighter, don't get me wrong, but he's there to be hit. He was knocked out, 4 fights ago. Deontay Wilder sparks him within 6 rounds, in my opinion, and he has to call out Anthony Joshua. I just think that's the fight to make. It's an exciting fight, and it has to happen. But we'll see how that one sort of plays out, as it were, at the weekend.
So we got some good fights this weekend, but let's get to the mailbag. I still want to make time for it because I do love the questions that we got there. So let's jump into it. Do you want to talk the Conor one? I love this question.
Yeah, the question. Exciting. Good to hear your thoughts on the potential McGregor versus Gaethje at 170.
McGregor versus Gaethje at 170. Y'all are bloodthirsty. This is a hype fight. I love it. Gaethje's been calling out Conor for a long time. Gaethje came in undefeated in the UFC, a knockout machine. He fought nothing but top 5 and top 10 fighters in his entire. I think he's only lost to people who are champion or interim champion in the UFC. He's an awesome guy. Conor, of course, I don't need to talk about what his legacy is. But yeah, what do you think of this matchup? I think this would be a fun one going in. 170 is the weird part, but I get it. I understand why.
170 is a weird part, but if you've got someone that weighs about 190 now and is looking is featuring in films. He's not taking MMA arguably as seriously as he should. We were talking about Conor McGregor here.
Yeah.
He's not making 155 anytime soon. I don't think he's making a comeback until next July, at least.
Yeah.
I think that International Fight Week card, a year on, is it a year or 2 years? I can't remember the last time he fought Dustin Poirier and broke his leg. But
yeah,
Justin Gaethje is not a guy that you want kicking a formerly broken leg. I know he did his little Twitter Q&A and said, look, I've got titanium in my leg now. It's a robotic leg. It doesn't matter to Justin Gaethje. With that being said, Justin Gaethje is the most hittable fighter in the lightweight division, without a shadow of a doubt. He will take several shots directly on the chin to land a couple of jabs. There's a video surfacing recently. I think Rafael Fiziev sort of reposted it, saying about Gaethje's head movement. Obviously, Fiziev's looking for a fight with Gaethje, and it's Dustin Poirier just landing about 4 or 5 straight jabs on Gaethje, who is just shelled up, but he's not shelled up. He's just shelled up with his hands quite wide. Poirier lands 4 or 5 jabs, 2 straights, and I think an uppercut before Gaethje reacts. And Dustin Poirier is as hard a hitter, Conor McGregor is as hard a hitter as Dustin Poirier, if not a little bit harder. He's probably slightly more accurate than Dustin Poirier, and he picks his shots a little bit better. It interests me because I'm a savage, but as far as the trajectory of the division, I mean, it's at 170, so it got no effect on the title. But if Conor wins, he probably gets the title shot against. Hopefully it'll be Leon still at the same time, but he probably gets a title shot with a 1 win at 170, which is a crazy thought.
I mean, that part's super dumb, and we won't get to it yet next, but I don't see what your problem is with Gaethje. Like, why does he even need defense when he has offense? He doesn't need defense.
Well, you see, the reason he needs defense is because I've been watching a lot of Charles Oliveira in prep for my analysis piece, and the guy's offense is questionable. It's very good. However, at one point he overswung a lead left hand so hard that he fell over.
He fell over. Yeah, I know.
This is a guy that trains under Trevor Whitman, who is supposed to be a striking god, and he's got a guy that's swinging so hard that he falls over.
Yeah,
he doesn't listen to corner advice. He's a quality fighter. He's a hard hitter. He doesn't listen to corner advice. He can't.
No. He's a crowd pleaser. He likes
exactly that.
Yeah.
If it was up to me, I would just have Justin Gaethje versus Michael Chandler fight once or twice a month, a round or two, just every single month on every single card. Why not? What's the worst that can happen?
I think it was Eddie Alvarez who said that no one hits harder than Justin Gaethje. It's also his leg kicks. So this the way he leg kicks, it's like a soccer kick, and he doesn't care what's in front of him. He just winds up. He throws the kick at 100% power. He throws all of his punches at 100% power. Of course, that's his downfall. He commits to everything that he's doing. He's no. I mean, fighting someone like Tony Ferguson, he looked like he was in a masterclass, and then Habib. He's fought the best of the best in that division. I can see what you're saying with Conor, but I'd pick Gaethje in this fight. I think
without a doubt, I'd still pick.
Yeah,
pick Gaethje, but I'd also call for it to be a 3-round main event because Conor's cardio always been suspect. Gaethje's cardio is suspect because, like you say, he doesn't throw 80-70% shots. He throws 95, 100, 110, 150.
Yeah,
he throws a shot where he falls over. This guy has no chill when it comes to his cardio and is willing to just go. So make it a 3-round fight because for 15 minutes, we'll get an absolute war.
Yes.
And then what we'll do is we'll make it a 3-round fight if it's close or if the guys look like they've got anything left in the tank. We'll just stick another round on.
Sure.
See how long they can go for. But my prediction for a potential fight would be a Gaethje win.
Yeah.
In under 2 full rounds because like you say, he just goes. He doesn't take that step back that maybe Dustin did. And the leg kick is going to be, everybody knows I'm a leg kick guy.
Yeah.
But that is, in this fight especially, that is the key. You've got a guy who's coming off a broken leg against a guy who is infamous for his leg kicks. He's finished fights via leg kicks before in World Series of Fighting at the time. It's logical.
Even Habib said if he landed 2 more leg kicks, I would have to change what I was doing. Like the way I was moving would have to change because this guy lay, and that was only in round 1. You know what I mean? Over 3 rounds, that leg is done. That's it. There's no doubt about it. No one kicks harder than him because he commits so hard to those. But yeah, I think that's a good fight. I don't know who. There's so many fights that you can give Conor that are just such easy ones, like another Dennis Seaver throwaway kind of like. There's lots of those style layups for him. But Gaethje is a fair fight. I think that's a good fight. Both guys arguably top of lightweight, or supposed to be top of lightweight. That's a good fight. I'm all for it. That is a blood and guts fight right there.
Well, that kind of what you're saying there, kind of then relates to the next question, the related implications of the top ranked guys turning down fights with anyone outside of the top 5.
It's always been, we know.
It frustrates me, but it kind of is what it is. You can't get frustrated by it anymore because we know that it's going to happen.
I know.
Especially in the divisions where a lot of the ranked, the guys in the top 5 are ranked, have faced the champion and lost to the champion.
Yeah.
Such was the case at welterweight before Kamaru Usman lost to Edwards.
Yes.
Kamaru was just facing, Edwards was sat out. He faced Bilal Muhammad that time. It was a little bit step down the rankings. And obviously, we know what happened there. But Kamaru was just facing, Masvidal twice, Covington twice, Gilbert Burns once, and then you had Khamzat coming up. But, if Gilbert Burns hadn't have given Khamzat that opportunity, Khamzat would have probably fought like a 6th, 7th ranked guy. I think Gilbert Burns was 3rd at the time, 3rd ranked guy. You look at the heavyweight division now is so stagnant because everyone's sat out waiting for Stipe to come back or Ngannou to come back or John Jones to come through.
Stagnant, right?
But then you've got guys, you've got Curtis Blades who rolled the dice against Tom Aspinall, who didn't sit out. Tom Aspinall, I think, was probably ranked 5th or 6th. Curtis Blades was ranked number 2 or 3. And he rolled the dice against Tom Aspinall, and obviously it paid off. Derek Lewis and Tai Tuivasa. Tai Tuivasa was ranked outside of the top, maybe even the top 10 when he fought Derek Lewis.
Yeah.
Chris Daukaus and Derek Lewis, these guys that do roll the dice, it does often pay off for them. But if you are a top-ranked guy, why would you? You know,
yes.
Petr Yan, huge risk next weekend.
Genuinely,
against Sean O'Malley. That's probably one of the biggest opportunities that we've seen for a lower ranked guy coming up against a former champion, a guy who competed for the belt literally in his last fight.
Yeah, but it's
huge opportunity. And Petr Yan, like you say, like you alluded to, is there's a risk for Petr Yan to fall out of title contention completely, to fall out of the top 5. If he loses to Sean O'Malley badly, O'Malley quite literally just takes his place ahead of him, pushes him down 3 or 4 spots in the rankings, and then Petr Yan has to go again then, and has to face no disrespect, a Rob Font, a Ricky Simone, someone much lower down in the rankings to then push himself up, and it's not always, it's not always worth the risk. But obviously Petr Yan's got such a strong belief in his own ability and a strong belief that Sean O'Malley is the guy to kickstart his championship push again, that he's willing to take that fight.
Well, yeah, and this is the thing with the way that the UFC has set up the model of what they want, of it's only forward facing. You get paid more by fighting the guys ahead of you. You get paid no bonus for fighting someone behind you. So all the guys ahead, and like you said, welterweight for like 5 years, it's just been chilling. It's done nothing for 5 years. All the guys in the top 5 doing nothing the whole time because you're not rewarded for it. So and especially against a real threat, Rafael Fiziev is a real threat to Gaethje. He can win that fight. That is, that's a banger of a fight. That is a close one or anything like that. But the point is that he's a real threat, and Gaethje doesn't get any extra reward for taking that risk. He probably
you can't move if you're the number 2 guy and you take a fight with the number 10 guy. You can't move up to the number 1 spot. Because you haven't faced anyone inside. That's the argument that a lot of people, and it will certainly come up next week, of Islam Makhachev. His biggest win is Dan Hooker or Bobby Green, or maybe Thiago Moises. Well, they're his 3 biggest wins.
Yeah.
With the greatest respect, they're not Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, Dustin Poirier.
Yep.
Just to name Michael Chandler, just to name 3 or 4 wins that Oliveira's got in his last, I think they're his last 4 fights. Yep. There's levels to this game as far as competition is concerned. And we don't know how good Makhachev is. That's the question, because he hasn't faced, with the greatest respect to Bobby Green, always been poor on the ground. Dan Hooker, always been poor on the ground.
Yes.
Thiago Moises just kind of got stuck in the headlights, I think, a little bit, and was quite a late notice replacement into a main event. But how good is Islam Makhachev? We'll find out next Saturday. But we'll break it down next week at some point, hopefully. And it's an exciting one, but we don't know the question because he hasn't fought anyone in the top 5. He's kind of jumped the queue a bit by fighting guys outside and on the brink.
It's a who you know. It's a who you know. When you got a good manager, you get a good what's the word that we can use for Habib? Not training partner, but legacy
mentor.
Mentor, yeah. When you got a good
you're friends
mentor,
with Hasbulla, that's the thing. If you're friends with Hasbulla, you get pushed.
Yeah, we should do probably a resume comparison for it's going to be a huge episode next week because we're so pumped with these fights. You can tell already we're talking about it, but a resume rundown for both of these guys would be good. But yeah, the thing is, Islam, in all honesty, he doesn't have the wins, but even the wins that he has shown that he is a little bit more reckless. He's a lot more reckless than Habib was. He's not Habib Jr.
He's been knocked out before in the UFC, so it kind of there are vulnerabilities there, and if there's any chink in the armor, Charles Oliveira will find it, and that's what's so exciting about next week's fight. But we can't jump ahead yet. We've got the blockbuster UFC fight night to watch this weekend beforehand.
Oh, you gotta watch it. This is gonna be I'm kidding. I'm not watching this weekend. I'll probably sleep. I think that's good. Anything else we need to cover?
I think that's it. We'll be all over the social medias this week trying to promote the hell out of a UFC fight night, which is pretty slow, but we'll have a few bits and bobs coming out on the site, and for me it's all eyes on the O2 Shields Marshall, and then I'll probably catch a highlight of Deontay Wilder's big knockout at the weekend as well.
Awesome stuff, Frazer. I will put all the links down below where you can get take a look at all of our articles. Folks, MMA Sucka, my name is Tim Wheaton, joined as always by Frazer Krohn. Thanks so much for your time, folks.
Thank you.